Hello, and welcome to week 19, book 19. This is Desertion by Abdulrazak Gurnah. Um, this is this gentleman is an African writer. He is born and raised in Zanzibar, which is partially where this is set, I believe. And this is Desertion, which is when did he write this? He won the Nobel Prize for Literature in 2021, and it says in the back here that he is the author of 10 novels. And this one was published in 2005. And this is supposed to be one of his more celebrated novels. Okay, so the the main thing to focus on here probably is a bit of post-colonialism. Now, for those of you unfamiliar with the term, basically what happened at the end of World War II, which is Germany and Italy, of course, lost, and the Allies, France, Britain, and many of the other European countries won. And all of these countries, well, a lot of these countries had colonial possessions. Because of the war, many of these colonial entities had not had a focus. Some of them had been invaded, some of them had been taken over. Germany, of course, and Italy, of course, as the losers, lost all their colonial possessions. I don't even think Italy had any. I think Italy tried to take over Ethiopia and failed. But that's beside the point in terms of what happened is after the war, the powers that be, getting together with the UN, the newly formed UN, and those kind of things, had to figure out what to do with these colonies. And what had happened was various kinds of freedom and liberation movements had happened. Now each country is slightly different in the way this played out. So I don't want to give the impression that it's all one thing. It wasn't. You'd have to look specifically at what happened in, say, Egypt, or what specifically happened in Tanzania or Ghana or anywhere else. But basically, all of these African properties and all of these Asian properties started to have various kinds of liberation movements and wanted to do a little bit more self-determination. Okay, and this is what has come down to us as known as post-colonialism. And what happens in post-colonialism is, now remember, during colonialism, these entities existed for the benefit of the home country. So British possessions, French possessions, German possessions, whatever, gave a large percentage of their produce, of their product, back to supporting Germany and supporting Britain and supporting France and wherever else. And the administration of these colonies was often by the Europeans and some hand-picked collaborators or people, native peoples, who worked with the colonial powers. And now, since these colonies were not originally based on any kind of political division that actually existed in pre-colonial Africa, there were some relatively arbitrary lines drawn in the sand and that kind of thing. A lot of what happened is, in many of these places, the group of natives that came to be known to collaborate with the colonial power was of a particular tribe, a particular ethnicity, a particular language, a particular religion, etc. And this, of course, would lead to some ethnic problems and some religious problems and some other problems as the center of power, the metropole, as you will, the colonial power, there was a bit of a vacuum in terms of taking care of these colonies, and that's a thing. I mean, the colonies were definitely bad overall. I don't think there's any way to argue with that, but they did bring a modicum of Western technology. They oftentimes brought a little bit of electricity. They oftentimes brought a little bit of modern sanitation. They oftentimes brought a little bit of a more democratic organization, although that must be said, the kind of democratic organization where only these people had it and these people did not. And they practiced rampant discrimination and racism and xenophobia and all kinds of things. I mean, South Africa's apartheid is the most known relic of the pre-colonial era that stayed over in the post-colonial era and was eventually eradicated. But it wasn't alone in having those kinds of natives couldn't do this, couldn't do that. Sometimes native languages were forbidden to be spoken or to be taught. Native religions and religious practices were oftentimes restricted. There were European-only zones. A lot of times natives had been dispossessed of all of their land. So there were all kinds of unequal treatment going on. I don't want to in any way pretend like that wasn't the case, but they did bring these kinds of larger connection to the Western world to these nations. So when the post-colonial moment began to happen between 1945 till I don't know 60, 65, something like that 20-year period, and a lot of these nations either rebelled and won independence, or were granted independence, or just had their colonial power pull out. Like I said, the story is different for each of them. Some of them were more violent than others. Some of them were done with a very peaceful transfer. The degree of discrimination and the degree of xenophobia and problems was different in different ones. So this is certainly not meant to be a broad, it was all the same, because it was not. Anyway, this is the reality that Gurnah grew up in. He left Zanzibar when he was 18, and he's lived the majority of his life in Great Britain, which you'd think, why would he live in the colonial power, the one that colonized his country? Well, it's a very, very complicated equation there, and like I said, there are some benefits that come with colonialism. Now, if you're doing a balance, the balance is almost always way more negative than positive, and that's a discussion for another time, and with more deliberate knowledge of discrete places and what actually happened in different places. But nonetheless, Gurnah had a great affinity for his past, and that's what this book is about. This book is about a white guy who stumbles into a black community connected to the colonial power in what was Zanzibar at the time. And on the land, I believe, on the land side, what country is that? It's not Somalia. It's not. Is it Tanzania? I think it might be Tanzania. I'm not positive. But he stumbled into that area, and he's initially taken care of by this Muslim family. And now Islam is only, of course, one religion, although it's the dominant religion in the area. It's the only one religion. So again, we have the immediate connection to this is a Christian white guy being taken care of by colonized black African Muslims. And this is happening in the year 1799, 1899. Okay, so right around 1900, 1899, before World War I, before World War II. A colony at the time. And this white guy, he's taken care of, and then he eventually falls in love with a black Muslim woman of the family who took care of him. And, well, they obviously cannot be together in any kind of legit, overt way, but they somehow, and the author, Gurnah, says this, he doesn't know how, but they became lovers. And he speculates on how that could have happened and what kind of secret communications could have happened between them. But they become lovers, and they move to another city, to Mombasa. And in Mombasa, they live as lovers in an apartment, which is, by the religion of her time and place, made her a really, bad woman, really. Okay, so that happened. She gave birth to she got pregnant. She gave birth to a child, but the white guy, he eventually somehow, I don't know, got cold feet, got called back, saw this colonial fling. Who knows exactly? Anyway, he hightailed it back to England. He is gone, and so she's left with this child. And in order to take care of her child, another white guy moves in, and maybe she's lovers with this guy. Maybe this guy's just taking care of her. He's kind of a little older, so who knows exactly. Gurnah says he doesn't know, and then, so what happens is, as this goes on, we jump to is it the 40s maybe? Jump to the 1940s, 1950s, about the time when the post-colonial moment is happening, and we see two sons that are born to a family in this area, and one of these brothers moves to England and basically mirrors the life of Gurnah. This is fiction, by the way, although it is slightly based, apparently, on maybe real events in Gurnah's life. And the guy who goes to England, he basically abandons or deserts his tribal background, his ethnic background, and he stays in England. Meanwhile, his other brother gets involved with a sort of fallen liberal woman who is the granddaughter of that original woman, the daughter of the daughter she had. And the taint is still on her family because of the white blood and because of her grandmother's sin, and then some scandal that she had in her own life. And so that's the point of this story, is examining through the lives of these people and the lives and loves that they have, how this plays out. And as violence begins to hit Zanzibar, because one of the things that happened in almost all post-colonial governments is after the power vacuum that was created by the white powers leaving, oftentimes created a vying for power between different warlords and different strongmen. And this is exactly what happened in, is it Tanzania, I believe? Like I said, I think Tanzania. Exactly what happened there. A provisional government was set up, but within a couple of months, it was toppled by would-be rulers, and so the country was plunged into a bit of a civil war kind of situation. And I don't know the exact situation, and Gurnah doesn't go into that in any kind of historical detail or broad view. He's focused more on how it affected the individuals in his story. And so what happens is the main character, eventually, it turns out to be this guy who has left, excuse me, who has left England, has left Tanzania and gone to England, and has come back and researching his roots after having deserted basically that whole background. And he's the one who finds out about the white guy, and he's in touch with a woman who it looks like is related to the other family as well. So it's a very interesting book, very easy read. Obviously, in every way, it would help to know more about the history and what he's talking about in terms of the details. But I found it to be fascinating. I thought the characters were well done. You learn to care about these characters. You learn to care about what was going on in their lives. And I thought it was a really fun read. I have another book of his. I don't know which one. I want to check out and see if I can find it. And he may show up again on this list at some point. But good book. Definitely recommend.